So the May BNS announcement dropped a week early, which is not surprising and is certainly welcome by those headed out to the Pro Tour New Jersey. With changes to both formats, there's a lot going on here. So in the interest of both keeping this streamlined and comprehensive and being easier on me to stay on track and get all my thoughts aligned, I'm actually going to break this up into two videos, one for CC and one for Blitz. So in today's video, we're talking the CC relevant changes from the April 25th update to the May 2nd update to the banned and suspended list. I'm going to be giving my take, not just from an overall competitive meta standpoint, but also my impressions and predictions on how this impacts the trickle down to our locals. A huge shout out to our channel members for supporting what we do here. If you want to get involved with the channel and the Dice Commando community, please consider joining as a channel member. Remember, these videos are only possible with your support. You can show that support with a like, a subscribe, and by leaving us a comment and sharing your feedback. Community first, and go Commando. Hey there, Flesh and Blood folks. Welcome back to Dice Commando and Go Again, a fabulous cast and good morning, or at least it is for me. It is the morning after the update. Remember, in New Zealand, they release it on their Monday, midday, and that's, generally Sunday night for those of us in the US. Not generally, that's the way time works. So I got up early this morning before work and wanted to get my thoughts in, at least for the CC stuff. I think that's what we'll be able to get through this morning. I do also just want to point out, thanks for dealing with the lighting. That's why we went with the small screen today. The sun's going to start coming up and it's going to wreak havoc. So I think we just throw the light on and we deal with it. So thanks for dealing with that. Now, today's cast is sponsored by our friends over at FabDB, the best resource on the web. Make sure to head over there because we're all going to have to go do some deck building, right? So when you're doing your deck building, go over there and modify your lists. Check them out while you're over there considering upgrading your account to unlock all those additional features. So thanks to our friends over at FabDB. All right, so for today's cast, talking about the banned and suspended BNR, right? So the BNS announcement, which is ironic. So it did not surprise me. We actually talked about that, I think, when we talked about the last BNR announcement, the very last BNR announcement. I talked about how I suspected they would do something early that would go into effect May 2nd. That's effectively what we're seeing here, right? So good news there for people heading over or coming over to the States or going to New Jersey, or right, so going to the Pro Tour. So good news for everybody. So before I throw up the thing, just you guys can read. There's probably already like 40 active videos on this already, right? You guys can go have somebody read to you. So I really just kind of want to streamline into kind of my thoughts overall. So but before I put it up, we start going through the details. I think that there's a lot of things about this I really like. I really like the way that they went very hard into the suspended list, right? I think that was really cool, how they're utilizing that tool and they're showing us how they're going to use it. I think that's good. Now, the negatives there are using it that way kind of puts a lot of if-thens on it, which is okay, right? And then overall, I chose Prism as the background just because she didn't get touched. Now, we can have the whole conversation about, who's good and all that, but so again, I think that the way that they did this was it was fine. We'll see what the fallout is. But overall, I think that there's a lot of assumptions that they're making because that's one of the things I like, right? I'm not doing a very good job here, but one of the things I like is that what they're trying to do, they didn't just fix the problem. They tried to forecast what the problems might be after they fixed the problem, quote unquote. So they're forecasting ahead. But the problem is, they're making assumptions that if those assumptions, I think they're logical assumptions, I think they make sense, but if for some reason something goes sideways on them, they could end up, in theory, in a worse spot than they are, right? So I think that's interesting to talk about, right? So, all right, pulling it up now. So Awakening Band, I think that one makes sense, right? I think it makes sense. I mean, it's just it kind of falls into the range of, punishing you, because we've seen that before on cards that they've decided to ban or do away with, that they didn't want to punish people for playing the game. And I think that's kind of where Awakening falls, right? So, they even do acknowledge below, they're like, hey, we realize that people have, kind of built around it because people have played around it. It wasn't even in the last deck. But I mean, fundamentally, I think they're identifying the problem of, if somebody comes out swinging, it just hurts them in the end, right? So banning Awakening tries to bring aggro back, right? The theory there being that aggro will put pressure on Prism, right? Like a Katsu or a Dash or someone like that who's able to do damage and then shoot off, or hit off, I guess, in that case, in Aura. So I believe that's the line there. So I think Awakenings make sense, because it is a feel bad. Now it hurts Oldhim, but so what, right? I mean, I think that's fine. So that one's banned, right? That's just done. I mean, it could always come back, because as we saw with Seeds, right? But so Autumn's Touch is suspended until Bravo becomes Living Legend, and then Bloodsheath is suspended until Viscera becomes Living Legend. So that's a really cool way to do it. And then they brought in Seeds of Agony, of course, as you guys are all well aware. So it's now suspended until Chane becomes Living Legend, which is kind of interesting because he's the only Shadow Runeblade, right? But I mean, obviously, presumably, if he gets banned, then we'll get another one, right? Or maybe even another version of Chane, or however that works. So the Autumn's Touch thing's kind of interesting. I always hate to see friendly fire, for lack of a better term, where, Earth Briar loses it. Earth Briar took a hit here, right? So he loses Autumn's Touch, loses Skeleta. I think those are all fine, right? I think those are all fine and all ultimately good calls. So what I'm surprised we didn't see here was any changes to Prism. I mean, that's my takeaway, right? So they go in below and they talk about it and they give their reasons, and that's fine, right? Their thoughts, in a nutshell, their thoughts are kind of what I already talked about, where they think that with the changes that are made, they think aggro stands a better chance, which then should hit Prism. I mean, that's basically the very dumbed down explanation, right? I think the problem is, I think the risk is that if things don't work out the way they think they do, not hitting Prism is kind of a big deal. So, I mean, again, we always have these separate problems in these type of games where, like, it's not winning, it's not a problem. And, like, I fundamentally disagree, right? Like, I think Prism is a problem, because what she does just by existing is she gatekeeps a lot of other stuff, right? So, if you look at the meta on the whole right now, one of the best ways blocking's not super huge, right? Overall, outside of your unmovables and all that type of stuff, right? Blocking's not super huge, right? So on hit effects carry a lot of weight right now, and bring in those on hit effects. A lot of the people who can bring in substantial on hit effects to maybe punish some of these other top decks are in many cases kind of gate kept by Prism. So, I mean, that's of course not an all-encompassing statement, but I think by and large, if you look at, like, Ranger has a really, really hard time with Prism, right? Because you don't have your weapon. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. We'll see how it plays out. They're obviously smarter than I am, and they have a plan. I guess all I'm trying to say here is that them having a plan is solid unless that plan's not true, and then I think they could have created another problem. So, I mean, I guess that's kind of it for my overall takeaway or concerns. Again, I think that the changes they're making is fine. Skeleta, I think, makes sense. I think it makes sense. And again, people are gonna have issues no matter which way it goes. Now, Autumn's Touch, I did kind of want to talk about that one. And I guess that's kind of the thing, right? If you look at this overall, it almost kind of feels like they're like, damn, we really hoped Starvo would go away by now. I think that's kind of what they felt already. So I think these are kind of like basically what they were. I mean, I think that's basically what they were going to do if Starvo had gone away. So we'll see. Now, but that's the thing, is I don't think Starvo's going to go away, right? Like with the discussion on Autumn's Touch is like, there are backfills for Autumn's Touch in that deck, right? It's just that you run something with less blocking. But like fundamentally, kind of what we were just talking about earlier, it's like blocking's not as important of a thing in the current meta, right? So does it like, I think you still run, what is it? It's Break Ground, right? Yeah, Break Ground. So you run Evergreen and you run Break Ground and you just take the 1 point hit or the 1 defense hit. but I think you're willing to make that trade, I think, right? So we will see on that. So I am a little surprised. So yeah, well, I already talked about, right? I'm a little surprised that they didn't do anything on Prism. That said, if I'm putting myself in their shoes, I don't think there's anything, like, I don't know what you do to Prism specifically other than just taking Luminars away. Like, that's all that I can think of in my head, and I think maybe that's part of the issue, is like, since there's no good, at least as I see it, right? And you know what? If you have a good scalpel or a good opportunity or a good suggestion for Prism, let us know. Like, I'd be very interested to hear what you think. But like I said, that's kind of where my head is I think that by and large, since I don't see a direct scalpel to bring Prism down a notch, right? And again, this is under the assumption, of course, that she does need brought down a notch. This is just what I'm saying, right? Under the assumption that she does need brought down a notch, I'm not sure how you do it without like kind of nuking her. So I think maybe that's part of the reason as well, is they're just kind of hoping that everything will just kind of fix itself from that regard. And I think their assumptions are logical. Like, I think that, I mean, we have talked on here before where, like, if Starvo went away, we thought Viscerai would go up, like, which is generally, I mean, it's not like cracking eggs, like, it's kind of generally accepted. So then when the aggro, but I don't know the aggro is going to come in with Starvo, like with these Starvo. I think that's the issue, right? That's what I'm trying to say. Probably unsuccessfully, is that I think that with the Starvo changes, I don't think that he's going to go away, which means I think she stays strong, which means I think she keeps gatekeeping. So like, I don't know that all that much changes here, right? Until Starvo actually LLs out. But if you're looking at the next month and change, I don't know that all that much is going to change, right? In terms of the power rankings. Now at your locals, I think there's a significant impact at your locals, right? I mean, locally, we have multiple people who are still on Earth Briar who really takes a hit, which is unfortunate. I don't know that Chane losing Skeleta is as impactful to him. I mean, it's not good, but like, I don't know it's that impactful to him, right? So people still, because there's a lot of people still playing Chane, at least locally here. Because you can go Aether Ironweave, which still blocks for 1. It has Battle Worn, so it doesn't go away. You can pop it for energy. So, I think that's okay. But locally, I think Earth Briar takes a hit hard, and I think Prism not being touched hurts your locals, I think, because I think it will continue to gatekeep a lot of those decks that other people want to play. So I mean, I don't know. I don't want to keep harping on the Prism thing, but I think that's kind of again, I want to be very, very clear here. I'm not saying that they should have nuked something on Prism, and I don't have a good proposal for what that would have been, right? But if everything doesn't work out the way that the script goes to, I think we could have a bummer. I think we could have a bummer. So yeah. Now, as far as like we talked about Autumn's Touch, like the impact there, I mean, it hurts Oldhim a little bit too, right? But mainly it hurts Earth Briar. So, all right, so let me make sure I've got everything here. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's the take overall out of the gate, right? It's solid. I do. I really like the way that they're doing the suspended list, right? I really like it. It makes a lot of sense. The Seeds of Agony thing is interesting because it basically does directly imply that. Actually, you know what? Whatever. I got a little bit of time. Let's talk Seeds, right? So Seeds is interesting to me because it's one of those cards where, like, I don't think. Let's take Seeds out of it, right? So it's not emotional or anything, right? The concept of banning a card, whether now or in the past, right? The concept of banning a card was that card generally did something we didn't want people to do. So by them pulling that off and pairing it with Chane, they're basically saying Seeds is doing exactly what we wanted it to do. It was just not what we wanted it to do with Chane. I mean, that's what they're saying, right? In not so many words. So, like, I think Seeds might be a fundamental problem. Again, you don't know what the hero is going to look like in the future or anything like that, right? I'm not trying to speculate or anything like that, right? But I think being able to play stuff for free from your Banish Zone probably is always going to be really good, right? Right? So, yeah, I mean, but, I guess I can always ban it again later, I guess. But it's just kind of odd that it got put there because they're like, it's too good. Yeah, but whatever. Let me know what you think about that one too. Hopefully you guys understand where I'm driving at there is like, just because a card was, Seeds right now, they have the luxury of doing this because it's only playable with Chane, right? But like, what if there's another card that was like really, Pletchy Skeleton is probably the only one I can think of right now. But, there are other cards that are like really, really good with a certain hero that are potentially playable by other heroes that would still then have that issue, right? So anyway, just kind of a side thought there. Like I think the Seeds of Agony thing's dangerous, but it's not dangerous for right now, I guess. So probably doesn't matter. Probably doesn't matter, I wouldn't think. Well, it doesn't for right now. So anyway, but that's kind of interesting. So anyway, I think that's pretty much all I have for the CC take. Like I said, I didn't really want to go through and read this to you guys because you can, read and there's a million other takes out there. But if you, I don't know, in closing, kind of really thinking about this from the local trickle down, obviously you have to do what's right for the top tier competitive. There's no question about that. No one's arguing otherwise. But I think that not touching Prism potentially carries weight at locals just from the gatekeeping aspect. Like, I think that's kind of a bummer. We'll see what happens with that, right? If Bravo, because Bravo aren't there only 2 Battle Hardens left, right? Isn't that correct? So I don't think he can be banned. Maybe he can't. I don't know. I don't think I'd have to go back and check the math, which I don't have available, and I'm not going to, drag you guys through that right now. But I think Starvo will be, I think in all likelihood, Starvo will be playable for the Pro Tour, right? So then do we really see much of a change in the meta? I don't think so, right? And maybe that's what they want. Maybe they want him. Maybe that's what they want. Maybe they want him to rotate, but then why do anything? So I'm kind of countering myself there. So yeah, that's an interesting thought, right? If they really wanted, if I'm taking the position that maybe they want him to go away, then why do anything at all? That's fair. So anyway, thank you LSS for getting this out early. It doesn't affect me. I'm not headed to the Pro Tour, but for anybody else that is, this is really, really nice. It's kind of what I said that earlier. I kind of expected him to do this. So makes sense, right on expectations. We will see what the smart kids do with all these changes, how it affects them. I think the changes to Starvo were really pretty straightforward. I don't think there's a huge impact there. We will see what, for Viscerai, it'll probably push Viscerai to be a little more mid-range, right? Or I should say that's not true. It'll push him to be more constant pressure, right? I would think. So that's that'll be interesting to see if maybe he can, because then he could, maybe, and then hit a couple times and pop off an aura. I don't know, maybe. Yeah, we'll see. All right, folks, let me know what you're thinking. Thanks for tuning in this morning. I will, just a little note. It's obviously there's a lot of stuff going on in the Fab world right now. I wanted to wait until all the Icelander. I didn't want to do a hot take on Icelander. I wanted to wait until all the spoils are revealed. So we'll talk about that. I want to talk about control in general. We'll obviously be back for the Blitz portion of this. So, yep, a lot of work in front of me for this week, but we'll get it all done. We'll get it all talked with. Thank you guys for bearing with me and tuning in. And nothing else, folks. Go Commando.